This upcoming weather has the potential to produce a lot of snow with two developing winter storms over the course of the next 7 days. So, we're going to really break down the details for you to keep you well ahead of the storm. We've got an area of low pressure that's just now starting to come to fruition across the Pacific Northwest. That is the area that's going to be diving down through the Rockies and set up a pretty potent area of low pressure within the Oklahoma vicinity. That is going to be starting the beginning stages of our full-blown winter storm with a lot of snow and unfortunately a lot of ice that's going to be slingshotted across the Central Plains through the Ohio Valley and eventually end up in the Mid-Atlantic region. And then we have another area of low pressure that will get its act together around the middle of next week around Baja California. That is going to be slingshotting across Texas as well as into portions of the southeast and eventually end up within the Carolina vicinity by the time we get into the end of next week. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily updates on this channel so I can keep you well ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the setup on the surface map this morning. We've got that area of low pressure that's going to be entering across the Pacific Northwest. They've just been inundated with a ton of heavy rain lately with just relentless systems one after another. That's going to bring more mountain snows for those areas across Montana through Wyoming, but eventually that will set up an area of low pressure likely as early as tomorrow night. And then we've got full-blown winter storm watches in effect across Kansas through the Ohio Valley and eventually end up into the Mid-Atlantic region. So let's zoom in to where those will be actually have the winter storm watches in place. We could easily pick up 4 to 13 inches of snow within this blue shaded area from Wichita back into Kansas City all the way upwards to into Lincoln. Does include those areas into St. Louis, Bloomington, into Springfield, back up into Indianapolis region, into Louisville, and it just gets nasty once you get into Kentucky through Cincinnati region. We could even get more snow across areas of Pittsburgh, and then end up with a little snow across areas of, say, Baltimore, back into the Philadelphia region. But some of these areas could have a lot of ice, unfortunately, with this winter storm they're going to be developing. So there's that low pressure center that's going to be ejecting off the Pacific Northwest, diving down through the Rockies, and really start setting up shop around into Saturday night time frame. And out ahead of it, you're going to be in the warm sector across the south, and that's going to set up a pretty potent low with a full-blown winter storm. So as the Arctic air, the first surge of Arctic air starts to plunge southbound, that's going to tap into that warm sector. And to the southeast, that's going to be setting the stage for severe storms. It's going to be Sunday. It's going to be a very dynamic day. We've got severe weather outbreaking across the southeast. We've got a cold Arctic front that's going to be diving southbound with a lot of high winds and then falling rapidly temperatures, and then the developing winter storm that's going to be taking shape with a very heavy snow and even some ice, unfortunately. So further to the south, that first initial stage in the warm sector, we could be looking at just strong, severe storms. I think Dallas is just on the outside of that with that approaching Arctic front that's going to be moving in on Sunday morning. But if you live in East Texas, down in the Southeast Texas, you could be under the gun for severe storms as we head into the afternoon, especially in the evening time frame for those living in Little Rock, up especially into Shreveport vicinity, down here into Lake Charles, gets into the Jackson, Mississippi area, and all the way up into Memphis as that warm surge of air will be out ahead. And that's why we do have the potential for some ice. Yes, so right now, the Weather Prediction Center has highlighted a pretty significant risk of some very heavy snow, especially within that red shaded area. These areas could at least pick up 4 inches, but some guidance is hinting at as much as 13, even 15 inches of snow within Kansas, those areas across Nebraska that will slingshot across Missouri, Illinois, back into Indianapolis through Ohio, and then eventually end up into West Virginia, and this will likely end up even with a little snow into the Baltimore region as well as into Philadelphia. So I think it all gets going by the time we get into, say, Saturday night. So tomorrow night it really starts to amplify coming out of in through the Rockies. We've got more heavy snow across the Rockies, and then setting up a pretty potent 999 millibar low pressure center that will start to deepen, and then that will set the stage in the warm sector as that warmer surge from the Gulf of Mexico starts to open up. And unfortunately, you got the cold Arctic shallow air coming from the north that will set the stage for that wintry mix, and then freezing on contact for those areas within the Kansas region. And I think as we get deeper into the day on Sunday, especially into Sunday afternoon, I think we've got a full just mess on our hands. We've got severe weather outbreaking across the southeast through Arkansas as well as into Louisiana, back into Mississippi. We've got that full-blown ice storm starting to come to fruition with a lot of ice coming out of Kansas, getting into Missouri, St. Louis. St. Louis alone could pick up 4 to say 11 inches of snow, compounding with a half inch of ice, folks. That is some dangerous stuff. We're talking about some serious power outages across a huge swath of the Ohio Valley with this significant ice storm, especially getting for those areas into the Kentucky region. It really gets nasty going into Sunday night, as that low pressure center will be swinging from west to east. Will all end with all snow into Missouri. Pretty much the entire state of Missouri is going to be clocked with either snow or ice. It's going to be really treacherous travel trying to travel within the vicinity, because we're not just talking a glaze or a tenth of an inch, folks. We're talking a quarter, half, some areas 3/4. You get up to 3/4, that's crippling, folks. That's crippling ice, and we could end up with even an inch of ice accretions in some portions of Kentucky. This is going to be some nasty stuff. Power lines coming down. A lot of power outages, unfortunately, within this area. So you've got the rain to the south, you've got the ice in the middle with the battle zone, and then you got all the heavy snow and the high winds are going to be coming in on the backside. But West Virginia could just get pounded with very heavy snow, and then eventually move across into Virginia and end up into portions of just a little bit as we get into Delaware by the time we head into that Monday morning time frame. So this likely starts on Saturday night, really amplifies going into Sunday, and then it all ends on Monday as we get into the mid-Atlantic region with some of that heavy snow moving back into the picture for them. But you can see the red line, right? The red line, that's the Arctic front that dips all the way down into the deep south. You're really going to be feeling this front on the backside because of the wind. The wind is going to just be packing a punch, and it really hasn't been that cold yet. This is our first, really, I would think, true kind of Arctic front that's dipping all the way down into the deep south. So this, your bodies really haven't acclimated to the cold yet, right? I mean, it's obviously, this is January. We're expecting it to be cold in January, which is, this is good if you're liking some cold weather and liking more normal weather in winter. And this is our, pretty significant winter storm that's going to be taking shape for that second week of January. And this is the first one. We could be having another one by the time we hit in the middle of next week. But right now on Monday, there's the high winds are going to be surging from the south, from the north down to the south, all the way and slingshotting across the southeast through the Ohio Valley. And by the time you wake up on Monday morning, it's going to feel full-blown winter out there with well below zero feels like temperatures, diving down to the northern plains, down into the central plains, even getting to below zero feels like within Oklahoma. So that's going to be a pretty potent Arctic front when the feels like gets down to, say, 10 degrees there in Dallas, 11 degrees in Shreveport. Yes, you're definitely going to be feeling this Arctic front in a big way with those high winds continuing to surge out of the north. But there's the unfortunate part about this winter storm. We could have a full-blown ice storm taking shape with quarter, half, even up to say 3/4 in some areas in Kentucky, and even some areas could pick up over an inch of ice. So the vicinity within Kansas, down through central and southern Missouri, back into southern Illinois, all the way, pretty much the entire state of Kentucky, unfortunately, gets clogged with a lot of ice getting into West Virginia, and that will slingshot into Virginia. And there's the heavy snow. So we got the system coming in from the Pacific Northwest that'll dive through the Intermountain West and set a pretty significant snow swath, anywhere from 4 to 13 inches. We could even have some higher isolated amounts, even higher than that. But we've got a lot of snow coming back in the picture for those areas across the Central Plains that will come through the Ohio Valley and slingshot through West Virginia. You could be overperforming with 15, maybe even some 18-inch totals. Is definitely not out of the question for those areas into West Virginia. That will slingshot into Virginia and eventually end up into portions of Delaware. Ended up in, say, areas of Philly, get some snow, into New Jersey, getting a little bit of snow. And that's just the first system. So here's the second system. By the time we get into Wednesday night, we'll have yet another area of low pressure starting to form around Baja California. And so right now, it all depends on the evolution of this trough that's going to be ejecting. So if it kind of hangs out, right, if it just kind of holds back, it'll send these pulses of what we call short waves out ahead of it. So if it does, it'll allow that colder air to sink more further south. Remember, we've got a new snowpack that's going to be dropping in from the north, right? So it's got that cold air to less modify this air mass. So if that holds back, you're going to have a little bit more bullish scenario with more snowfall totals into your southern regions, ejecting out of Texas into the southeast. If it's a little bit more progressive, if it slingshots across the state, it's not going to have time to pick up a lot of the moisture, and you're going to have a lot less snow amounts that will be coming in. But if it holds back, yes, that's going to be the big difference. So right now, we've got here's the overall setup going forward. So we've got an area low pressure likely forms down there into Mexico, could produce some, at least a little bit of snow starting to come to fruition across New Mexico that will slingshot across through Texas. But I think it kind of really starts to get going on Thursday. So we'll be breaking down the details. We'll be fine tuning this on which scenario is going to come to fruition more, the more bullish or the less bullish scenario, depending on the evolution of this trough that will be coming out of Mexico. But right now, we've got some snow that couldn't fall across areas of North Texas. We could have an area of having their own ice storm. So again, if it holds back, it's going to have a lot more moisture to work with. The Gulf of Mexico is going to be open. We've got another surge of Arctic air coming in from the north. We could have a more significant storm if it holds back down there towards into Mexico. And if it does, it'll send off these areas of pulses of short waves that come across, and we'll have a much more potent initial winter storm by the time we head into Thursday and say Friday of the end of next week. And that could slingshot across areas of the southeast. So yes, we could be looking at a pretty healthy winter storm if this does come to fruition down there into across the south. If that area of low pressure does in fact hold back for, in an extended period of time, allowing that cold air to come in. But yes, we could be looking at more snow by the time we head into, say, Friday night into Saturday. More snow back into the Tennessee Valley, back into Kentucky again, into West Virginia. Those areas back into Georgia could see some ice. South Carolina could see some ice by then, back into Carolinas. So yeah, we've got two pretty significant winter storms. The Climate Prediction Center was hinting at this again a couple of days ago, back into Texas through the 8th, 9th, 10th time frame. So once we get in, say, the 10th time frame of January, that will be highlighted mainly over Arkansas by then, down into the southeast, and eventually end up in the Carolinas. We'll have more snow flying across the areas of West Virginia and upstate New York. And then we'll even have another new system coming in across the northern plains with more snow by the time we head into, say, the 10th through that 14th time frame, because the cold air is not going to go anywhere. Once it gets here, I think it's going to lock in. So we're going into the coldest time of the year. This is January, folks. You expect it to be cold, right? You expect to have winter storms, right? So it's going to be busy. It's definitely going to be busy in the weather department, to say the least. But know this: once that cold hits on Sunday, I don't think it's going to go anywhere for a while. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.